Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to the first session of InfiniteLoop 2.0. It's quite nice to see you all here, inspired and dedicating your time to participate.
Recording
And
in
that's the
progress.
first step you have to do to become successful in your university life. I'm Ashwini Jayamanna, your moderator for the day, and I've seen the content prepared for the day. So I'm going to show you a valuable and insightful evening, and you'll leave with no regrets. Before we get into the actual session, let me give you a brief introduction to InfiniteLoop 2.0. I'm sure most of you guys are new to your university journey, and I'm sure most of you have met a bunch of quite talented individuals in your time here. And I'm also sure you might have felt alienated, at least for a brief moment in your university life, seeing all the web devs, startup founders, interns who might be sitting next to you in the lecture halls. But fear not, because in here, you're never too late to up your skills. And we have just the right program ready for you, InfiniteLoop 2.0. InfiniteLoop is a 6-week long workshop series organized by the student branch of UCSC, IEEE student branch of UCSC, focusing on topics carefully filtered for you so that it will help you smoothen your academic life and also discover the emerging fields of today's tech world. As you can see on the screen, today we'll be talking about web development. In the next week, you'll learn how to master data structures and algorithms, and game development in the week after, followed by a session on Linux and CTFs, computer systems, mobile app development. You will receive a digital certificate at the completion of the workshop as well. So share the word with your friends and participate in the topics you love and are curious about. Today's session, Web Development 101, will be conducted by Kaviru Hapuarachchi, a second-year IS undergraduate here at UCSC. He'll be giving you a detailed introduction on how to build a website and the background knowledge you'll require so you actually know what you're doing. Welcome on board, Kaviru. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Ashwini. Let me share my screen. Okay, hope you can see my screen.
Yep, we can see.
Okay, so first of all, I'm Kaviru Hapuarachchi. Like Ashwini said, I'm a second-year undergraduate at UCSC. So first of all, I want to thank InfiniteLoop Organizing Committee and the IEEE student branch of UCSC for having me today during the initial session of the InfiniteLoop. So actually, I can remember my first session joining the InfiniteLoop myself for the InfiniteLoop 1.0. So yeah, I think we can get started with the session. Is that okay?
Sure, I can go ahead, Kaviru.
Okay, thank you. So there are two things I want you to do tonight. So the first, actually, this is the previous slide. I have to change this to two things. But the only thing you have to do tonight, and that would be, during this session, I'm going to talk about many new terms. If you're new to web development, you're going to find it pretty hard. I mean, I'll explain some of these terms that I'm using during this presentation and during the hands-on session. But with the time, I don't think I have enough time to explain every single point to you. So I want you to take a piece of paper and write those things down. At the end of the session, after the session, you can go through those terms. If I explained it, you can write the meaning down. And with the time, if I'm not going to explain that point, then you can just open your browser and see what exactly the meaning is. So if you don't know the meaning, I want you to write it down. So, and the second thing is, during the session, I don't want any of you to post any questions you have when I'm talking about something or when I'm discussing something. So I will give you 2-minute Q&As between when I'm changing from one topic to another. During that time, you can put any question you have on the chat, and I'm happy to help. So the next thing is the agenda. So in this web development web 101 session, I'm basically going to start with the basics of web development. And then I'm going to move on to some tech, and I'll talk about the tech stacks that we use usually in UCSC. And then I'll talk about my personal tech stack and that kind of stuff. Then I have some hands-on session prepared for you. I think I shared the link to the repo as well, but I'll again share it with you when in the start of the session. And then I'll talk about some new small things that are coming up, and what you have to do in order to become the web developer that everybody recognizes. So let me just move on to the basics first. So first, let's talk about what is web development. I mean, when we talk about web development, I actually did this. I put this in Google and got this definition. So web development is the work involved developing a website for the internet or internet. So in this part, only in that part, if you don't know what is internet and internet, I'm not going to explain that one in this session. So I want you to write those key terms down. Use a notepad if you have, or just use a pen and paper. It doesn't matter. Write these small things down, and after the session, if you don't know the meaning, please go through it, because I know how important it is to actually invest time researching these new key terms that you don't know about. So web development can range from developing a simple single static page of plain text to complex web applications, electronic businesses and social networks and services. So let me highlight these few key terms. I'm going to talk about what is a website and what is a web application in the next part. So yeah, again, if there are any key terms that you don't know, if you don't understand, please write those things down. So the first part is, what is a website? Basically, a website is a series of web pages. Basically, these things contain static content. So what's the meaning of the static content? The static content means the things that stays the same. So if you go to our ucsc.cmb.ac.lk, you can see that those things stay the same, which means it's only a one way of communication. I mean, you can't interact with the website, right? I mean, you can go through website, but when you can't really have any of those interactions that you want to have with the website. And usually these websites are hosted on a server. So I'll talk about the difference, but I'm just going to go to the web apps in the next part. So again, a web app is also a series of web pages, but the main difference is where user can interact. So for an example, if I take VLE, so the difference between VLE and our UCSC website is, can you put something into the website? Can you ask a question? Can you post a question? Can you do something and that the website will react? No. But if you go a VLE, if you go to a VLE or other applications like Facebook or Instagram or social networks like that, or whatever it is, when you put something into it, it stays there, right? For an example, you can submit to assignments, you can see the calendar changing, you can message through the VLE as well. So one of the key differences is that a web app is basically runs on the server. So in this one, I used hosted on the server. In this one, I'm going to use run on the server. This has a key difference. Actually, yeah, this has a key difference. We usually use hosted on the server when it comes to web apps as well, but a web app usually runs. It means it's working there. If you're familiar with React or some kind of a front-end framework, you know you need a execution. It runs your program in the web on the server. So when we talk about in web apps and websites, I think first you need to understand what is client and server. So first, a client is the user. I mean, if I'm the one who is using Facebook, then I'm the user. And server is the place where the website or the web app is hosted. When in web apps, so actually this arrow should be it can be changed from other direction, but when a client go to the Google and type ucsc.cmb.ac.lk, then the browser is looking into the DNS, and somehow it finds the server, and the server gives a response. That's the thing that we can actually see. But when it comes to web applications, one of the most important differences is that there are interactions between the client and the server. So in the web apps, again, if I go back, one of the things you have to remember is a static series of website is a static series of web page that usually contains static contents, and which means things they stay the same, and it's usually a one-way communication. Most probably the websites most of the websites are not actually in use today. They are in use, but I don't think you, other than once you when you see a portfolio or something like that, then that's a website mostly. But with the current technology and with the new things coming up, most of these things are moving into web applications. So another thing is there will be no interactions between the site and the client. Only a client can see what the static content is hosted on the server. In the web apps, again, the series of web pages, but always a user can interact with the web app and it runs on the server. So I talked about client and server, and I talked about this part as well. But so in this part, basically you need to understand, when it comes to web development, a lot of people think that knowing tech, you can actually develop a website. You can't. I mean, you can, but the website that you are developing is not going to it's not going to work efficiently or effectively as when it comes to maintaining that website. So first, I need to talk about a few architectures. There are different architectures that are very famous, but I'm just going to go through two architectures mainly. The first one is I just talk about client and server architecture. In this one, for this one, I actually have this one. Let me show you. Yeah, I think you can see my browser. Okay, so I'll share this link with you in the group. This is something I found out today, and this document contains what you need to know, you need to understand when it comes to working and thinking about web architectures. So again, I'm not going to go through each of these architectures. I'm just going to give you an example for uh, I'm just going to give you the names. So the first thing is client and server. Then the next one is MVC. MVC is also one of the most used architectures in the world. It's model, view, and controller. If you use if you are making desktop applications, that kind of stuff, you probably have made this architecture. And even in web application development, this is one of the highly used, and this is one of the most scalable architectures that I personally think. And yeah, I think that covers the basics, and this is our first 2-minute Q&A session. So you have about few minutes. It's not just 2 minutes, but you have a few minutes. If you have any questions, now's the time. And yeah, I'll give you about 2 minutes. If you have any questions, you can put it in the chat now. Okay, so it doesn't seem like any of you have any questions to ask. Then I think we can move on to the next part. But before moving on to the next item, which is tech, I just want you to write these things down. Let me, yeah, write these things down. I'm not technically asking you to write these things down. I will share these slides with you, but I want you to keep these key terms in your mind. If you are using a notepad, just type these things down. After this session, please go through and see exactly what these things mean. For an example, what dynamic mean, and I have included DNS here because it's a very important part of the web development. You need to understand how to host a web application. I mean, you can develop a web application, but if you don't know how to host it, then how are you going to show it to other people? There are different tools you can use. You have to understand how a server works, how DNS pointing and those kind of stuff work. So that's why I added this. I have added a small 2-minute Q&As, and after that, there's you have the homework slide. In this one, you just have to write these things down or take a screenshot. Again, I'll share these slides with you as well. Yeah, if you don't have any questions in that part, we can move on to the next topic, which is the tech. So again, like I said in the beginning, always basics is better than tech. If you understand the basics, you can use whatever the tech stack you want. You can use whatever the languages you want to develop your web application. But if you don't understand the basics, if you don't understand how a web server works, then you are going to build a web application that cannot be scaled, that cannot be used by another developer, that he can't, or the next person that's going to maintain your web app is going to get stuck somewhere and then have to rebuild it again. So if you, this is something you need to understand when it comes to anything in IT related fields. This is one of the main mistakes I made in my life, starting from tech, not the basics. So don't make that mistake. Okay, so the next thing is the tech. In this tech part, I think I'm going to just talk about few tech stacks. Yeah. Again, so what is a tech stack? A tech stack is a set of software subsystems, components needed to create a complete platform. So the complete platform means the apps that you actually use, the UVLE, the Facebook.com, Instagram. Then there are other apps like you use GitHub. Those are the complete platforms. You don't see small subsystems when it comes to working with them. But when you're developing it, you have to understand what exact subsystem, what exact components that you need to develop. So yeah, let's put software let's put for software aside for a second. Let's think about a car. So in a car, you have subsystems, and the car is itself the complete platform. So can a car run without its components? Without some components, the car can run. I mean, it doesn't need a windshield. I'm basically talking about moving car from A to B. So, but there are a few things that you can run a car without some components. But when it comes to it's same for the developing. When you are developing web app, there are some components that you can develop later. But in order, if you want to go to market first, that kind of stuff, you can develop a website in a. There are different ways, and yeah. For an I'll continue with the example of the car. So uh, in the web applications also, you have these different components. So does anyone have any idea about what are these different few components that you actually see in a website? So I think we can open the chat for a minute. And yeah, if you have any idea, what are the components that are generally available in a web app? What do you think? Just put it in the chat. It's just to get an idea whether someone, is there anyone who is actually know something about web application development, that kind of stuff. Okay, there are a few messages. Yes. Okay. So there are different types of messages. I can see two types. First one is a person who's talking about the parts you actually see. These are not the things I'm talking about. I'm talking about a in a full complete web application. What are the components? So there are correct answers. Yes, I can see a front end, back end, and this web hosting as well. So yeah, database. Yes, those are the main components that I'm going to talk about. So let me just go to the next slide. One of the main component is the web server. For an example, whatever the site you are seeing, whatever the application that you are using, it runs on a server. And in the web server, we usually have the front end and the back end. So what does front end mean? So basically what front end mean is it's the thing that you actually see as a client out from outside. And that's the place where you actually interact with. When you click a button, let's talk about the VLE because that's something you all know about. So when you go to your VLE and when you click your login button, then that login button is the front end part. But when you click that button, then there's a whole another business process that's running behind the scene. So that's where the backend comes. That is where actually the magic happens. So when you click that button, then there's this function. There might be several functions, but there's that function that sends you to VLE URL then slash login. So that's how the backend usually works. So you have your front end and your backend in your web server. And then if you are already a user, when you log in into your VLE, then you see that there's already stored information. The information that the assignments that you have submitted, the slides the lectures have uploaded, that's the place. Database server is the place that all these uh, components, all this information, all these documents, all this data is stored. Not in the database server itself, it's stayed in the database, and the place where the database application runs, we call it the database server. So again, what are the main components? We have the web server, which consists of front end, which is the thing that we see on our websites and web applications. And then we have the backend, that is where exactly the business process happens. And then we have our database server, which is the place where the database applications are running. So that's about tech stacks. So I have two tech stacks in my mind. I'm going to talk about in the next part. One of the main things is the WAMP stack. This is the tech stack. I think about 70-80% of our applications that we use on a daily basis are written in some. This is, I think, over 80% of our web applications are written in this WAMP stack. So I'm going to go to the next slide and give you a small insight. So the W means Windows. So W is the OS that we run our WAMP stack, that the place where we run our application. So, but it's the operation systems. If you use this tech stack with Linux, then you can call it LAMP. And if you use it with Mac, then you can call it MAMP as well. So this is the place. This is just the OS part of the tech stack, and then we have what's the next letter is A. So the next part is the Apache. So this is the basic web server that we use. This is where our actual front end and the back end of our web application runs on. So just one single thing. This is the tech stack that you have to use in your UCSC's first and second year projects. I mean, you can use Java as well, but this is one of the most used tech stacks. And I think if you're developing a web application, 90% of the time you are going to stick with it because there are the tech stacks that are coming up and some other tech stacks as well. But this is the tech stack that you have to use. And I think this is the one that's going to get your work done in the upcoming 2 years. So this is the thing that you have to learn. of course, you can learn other tech stacks, but you have to focus on this one as well. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so I talked about the Windows, then the Apache. Apache is the place where you host your front end and the back end of your website. It's the place where everything runs. And then you have MySQL, the M. And so basically MySQL is an open source relational database management system. You can see the SQL part. SQL means structured query language, the language that we use to manipulate data in a relational database management system. So uh, in the industry, I think in the industry and other in the industry, they basically use Postgres SQL as well. And if you're doing any side projects, you can use SQLite. I know I'm just putting some words out there. I just want you to write these things down, and after the session, just go through these terms and understand what these things actually mean. So again, we talked about the place where actually our web server runs. That's where is it? Yeah, that's the Apache. Then we have MySQL, and then we have PHP, the last part. PHP is the language that you use to work on the backend of an application, backend of this web application. Uh, I was not a fan of PHP in the beginning. I liked using JavaScript on backend, on server, and on front end as well. But uh, as I started learning PHP during last year, I think I quite got interested in it. I think you will too. It's a very versatile language, and it's actually, I think during about 10 years ago, this is one of the languages that you could actually host a server for a very cheap price. Today, you can host a JavaScript server for free, Universal or something like that, but uh, still, it costs only $4 per month just to host a good PHP server on DigitalOcean or something like that. But whether you like it or not, you have to learn PHP because that's one of the it gives you the understanding of how a web server work. I loved it. When I started using it, I actually loved it. So I think we reached another 2 minute Q&A sessions, a small Q&A parts. So I know I talked about a lot during the last subtopic, but if you have anything you want to ask, now's the time. Please put any questions you have in the chat, and I'm happy to answer any of these things. So there's another one. Okay, that's a personal PHP or Java. I'm not going to answer that. When I asked about the components, there's this one called DevOps. 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 DevOps it's a culture. It's the way you actually work. DevOps, yeah, I'll talk about that. I have seen many people who should this language. Why some experience they say that. So I don't think PHP is a bad. I don't think of PHP as a bad language. I mean, one of the things that it used is the server actions. It's not something that JavaScript used to do, but during the last few years, most of the frameworks that use JavaScript as a front end. For an example, if you're using JavaScript, then most probably you will use React when it comes to developing a front end application, and most of these frameworks are adapting to use these server actions during the last year. So for an example, Next.js, they did not have any serve actions back in the day, but they started using serve actions, and I think this one of the most performing one of the most it improved their performance as much as a lot. And yeah, I have seen that many people who say PHP is a bad language. Why some experienced devs say that? Could you please explain? So again, it can be different from person to person. A language, the way you work with the language, it depends on you. If you like to use PHP, and if it when it comes to developing a small website, or it depends on the size of the thing that you work on, and it depends on your experience. So I think the best thing you can do is just try to use it and see how it feels. I mean, most of you as first year undergraduates, you have time. So try to use JavaScript, try to use PHP, build a web application, see how it works. LAMP එකද හොඳ, WAMP එකද හොඳ? So that's actually that's again up to you if you prefer to use Linux. And if you are making applications mostly on server sides, then yes, Linux is the best OS to run a server. It's fast, it's simple, it's customizable, it's open source. Yeah. But if you are making an enterprise application or something that that person that you use on a day, you if you prefer to use it on a Windows OS, then WAMP it is. Will we be discussing HTML and CSS today? Yes. In the hands-on session, we have some HTML and CSS parts. How about SAMP? What is the best, WAMP or SAMP? I think most probably you can use WAMP as well, but SAMP is better. It's just better. You can use it. And importance of web development. I think we'll talk about that in the end as well. But yeah, so එහෙනම් 80% WAMP use කරන්නේ ඇයි? I just mean the tech stack, not the WAMP itself. I mean, I said that WAMP, LAMP, or MAMP, you can use whatever the tech OS with your tech stack. And yeah, 80% it's usually yeah, it consists mostly Linux servers. So yeah. What does S in SAMP stand for? Actually, I don't know that. SAMP. I don't know what that is. Can you oh sorry, then I thought I heard SAMP. It's XAMPP. He said XAMPP. Yeah. Okay. If there are no any other questions, we can okay. Raimal says that SAMP is the cross OS you can use across multiple OSs. So yeah, thanks Raimal for saying that. Okay, if there are no other questions, we can move to the next part as well. Okay, so again, related to a SAMP or a WAMP. I mean, I'm talking about the softwares that you use when it comes to developing these web applications. Just search it. You can find SAMP. And I think mostly when you're developing your first year or second year projects, that you will use, if you're using Windows, then you will use XAMPP. And I think on Mac, I use WAMP somehow. It's some kind of a server that I used. And when it comes to running PHP, I used Herd as well. That's a good one if you are a Mac user. It helps you run Laravel, that kind of stuff. But for starters, these are the homeworks, right? So WAMP, Apache, SQL, MySQL, PHP, and find out actually what localhost means and how it works. And then there's this open source. When it comes to talking about Linux, of course, you have to talk about open source. And I think I talked about how the login button works with the backend of the server. The word is request. And yeah, again, another thing that you have to learn about. So the next one is the MERN stack. I'm not going to talk about MERN stack right now. If we have time after the hands-on session, I'll talk about it. There are so many resources you can actually use. You can use docs, you can use YouTube videos. You can find everything on the internet about the MERN stack. There are so many resources. Actually, I'll send a small document as well after the session that contains some of the main ways I started using MERN and how I learned MERN. Some personal projects that you can actually work on as well. You can find most of these personal projects on my GitHub if you just search Kaviru, Kaviru BC, I think. Yeah. Okay, so the next part is the hands-on session. So in this part also, I'm just going to go through a few basic things. I'm not going to dive deep into any of these things. I'm just going to show you what exactly this means, because InfiniteLoop is for the people that who are just getting started. So as I think I sent this one as well. You need to have installed VS Code or any other code editor that you prefer when it comes to working on something very small. And then if you're using VS Code, you can install the live server extension, and pretty is optional, but yeah. So can you give me a raise of hands if you have these things installed? Because okay, one. Give me a raise of hands if you have VS Code installed. Okay, we have 68, 14, 15. Okay, that's enough. Okay, so I will give you about 2 minutes now, 2-3 minutes. I don't think VS Code is a big file, but yeah, I don't think yeah, I'll give you about 3 minutes. If you have installed VS Code, install the it's about 80 MB. Okay, so it's an 80 MB file. If you have a good internet connection, just download it and install it. I think I sent this one. There's this link you can use. Let me just copy that link. Mhm. Yeah, I'll put it in the chat as well. You can just go here and install it. You can download and install it. It's about 80 MB. And then you can install the live server as well. I'll give you about 3 minutes off. So it's now it's 7:58. So I'll start again in about 7, 8 or 2. I'll give you about 4 minutes for that. So during that time, if you have any questions, just put it in the chat time. I'm happy to help. So during that time, I'll talk about another thing, an integrated development environment. So the question comes to this: VS and VS Code. Which one of these is a integrated development environment? You can put it in the chat. Okay, there are two types of answers. Actually, both answers are wrong. Actually, that made me rethink. I should search it. Okay, so can you give me a raise of hands if you have it installed? Okay, Tusar is getting there. Oh, again, can you give me a raise of hands if you have, again, I'm asking again, do you have your Visual Studio Code installed or any other code address? Ah, okay, that's enough. Okay, so when I was going through the chat, it made me actually go again and see whether actually VS and VS Code are both those things integrated development environments. They are not. So if you have used VS, then you know how it actually works. And what is the main difference I see in an IDE and a non-IDE? For an example, so basically VS Code is not an IDE. It's a text editor that's based on extensions. Yes, it does most of the things, an IDE does, but it's a very lightweight text editor. It's not a lightweight text editor, but it's an extension-based text editor which has a compiler, but it used other programs to run it. When it comes to an IDE, if you have built a Windows console application in Visual Studio, then you know that you don't need extensions or other things to run that code. So I mean, you can use VS, of course, when it comes to developing JavaScript applications and other things, but I prefer to use VS Code because it's lightweight, and actually VS does have a Mac version, but it's not even close to what they offer to Windows application. So again, integrated development environments. So there are different the both of the things that I talked about Microsoft made, but and again, Visual Studio Code is an open source one as well. So you have JetBrains, one of the other key integrated development environment providers. They have a great lineup as well. They have yes, VS for Mac is discontinued, but I thought there was an announcement about a new one coming. Yeah, thanks, Rakshit. So there's JetBrains. They have a great series of IDEs, but they are very expensive ones, and you can actually use your GitHub student developer pack to get the student versions, not the student version. You can get all these integrated development packs, integrated environments for free that they provide by JetBrains. And I personally use IntelliJ. It's a great environment to use Java. And I used PyCharm as well when it comes to working with Python. Yeah. So I think since most of you have installed VS Code, and again, feel free to do some research about this. Again, as I was actually doubting. I went through some websites, and I thought about this the IDE and non-IDE battle. But when Raimal and other people putting in the chat about that this is VS Code is also an IDE, then actually it got me started to doubt myself. So again, what I did was just go to your web browser, just type it, and just see Reddit. There's Reddit, there's Stack Overflow. Again, these are not 100% accurate things. You have to actually go through and find what is actually the accurate thing. But you can see that other people also face this problem. You are not alone. So the next part is the hands-on one. So I think you can let's put the link in the chat again as well. You can use the QR. So use this one. I don't have the repo link exactly. Just go to this one, and then there's this repo link button. You can see, click it, and you can download the repo link from here. Yeah, here it is. So this is a very basic hands-on session. I'm not diving into anything special here. I'm just going to show you a very small things if you're a beginner. Yeah, you can do this with me, but I don't. Yeah, okay. You can clone this if you are familiar with Git. I'm not going to talk about Git now because it takes another whole 30 minutes, 40 minutes, like something. So if you are not familiar with Git, then you have to again go to YouTube. You can go to another sources as well. Search what is Git. Search how to use GitHub. You need these things. I'm not joking. You are going to actually as a small activity at the end of the session as well. You need GitHub for that. Yeah. Just go here, and as you can see, there are branches. I categorize these things with one. During this hands-on session, I'm going to develop a simple form because I thought about creating a portfolio. I can't show exactly what does each of these things do when talking about when I'm working with a portfolio. But if I just can build a simple form, I can show how each of these things come together. So the chat, is there anything? Okay. So this is the link for that one as well. So I created that site as well just to show you something there's a small form in that site as well. So in this one, I'm going to talk about HTML, CSS, JS, and there's a PHP one part as well. I'm not going to show a demo of it. I don't have the code file as well because it's a big code file, but I have attached the link where you can actually go through with it. Yeah, let's talk about HTML. Hypertext markup language is a programming code that tells a browser how to structure a web app and its content. So yeah, let me go to the demo part. So okay, so I think you all can yeah, that's the chat. What is the best IDE for Mac? It depends. If you are using Python, if you are using JavaScript, then the solution is not to use an IDE, just to use Visual Studio Code. It's very light. And again, if you have any other opinions, again, feel free to put that in the chat as well. So I'm just going to copy this question and I'm going to put it in the chat, because there are people who know about this one. So what do you think is the best IDE for Mac, in your opinion? For me, when it comes to developing Java, I think I loved the experience with IntelliJ. There's nothing I would use when it comes to working with Java. And when working with this web stack as well, I use Visual Studio Code, and JetBrains has a good series of, yeah, it's always language dependent. Yeah, I mean, if you use Visual Studio Code, it's not an IDE, but with the extensions they have with Visual Studio Code, there's a huge open source crowd. That means they are putting new extensions every day, and they are updating these things as well. For an example, the extension pack that I asked you to install, Live Server. If you go to extensions and search Live Server here, you can see 50 million developers has downloaded it. I mean, it's not a small number. If you just go and type C has a special extension pack. How many downloads? 66 million downloads. Visual Studio Code has a huge user base, and they have huge number of extensions. So basically, for your work, if you're using a Mac, I think Visual Studio Code would do. But if you are doing some things related to Java, and that's the main thing I used another IDE for. If you do Java, I suggest you to use uh, IntelliJ. As if you are not a student, then it's a very expensive bill. But if you are a student with GitHub Student Developer Pack, search this. This is one of the things that you need during your next 2 years. GitHub Developer Pack, GitHub Student Developer Pack. You need it. Go to it and activate it. Yeah, Notepad. Yes, of course. If you are from UCSC, you know you have used Vim in your first semester as well. Yeah, actually, I do use Vim when it comes to creating small things. If I have to do it on my, I have this shared Linux server as well. In some of those cases, I do use Vim, but yeah, it's not easy. Yeah, so let's get started with our hands-on session. So the first thing is you have Web1 InfiniteLoop. So when you use this Git repo, actually, I could have put all this in the same branch, but I just want to add few branches so you can see it. So when it comes to, let's move on to the HTML part. So when you go to HTML, you have three files. This is what exactly I'm going to use in my VS Code. So by clicking this, you can change your branch, or you can use git checkout. Yeah, so the first code is hello world, of course. So this is where I'm going to use the live server. When I click go live, going to open a new browser window. And so what happens when I save one? I changed one. With your live server, you can see the changes at the same time. Again, if you are using it, then you can actually see any changes made. If any changes are made, you can see it shows here. And again, I suggest you to use autosave if you prefer it. I use it personally. Again, up to you. So you have hello UCSC, that kind of thing. Every change that you make is right there. So let me show you something that you can do with this. When you use an exclamation mark, it's use the emit, and it creates you this thing. It creates your HTML just like that. But when you do that, I think, yeah, I can add the title to the document. I don't know whether you can see it, but in here, right here, you can see that the title is title. When I change it to title, you can see the change happening right here, just like that. And then I just have to add hello world. So when I'm working here, I don't know whether you can see it, but you can see some of my texts are generated right there. That's because of the GitHub Copilot. I'll talk about the generative AI at the end and how we can use it. But if you are new, if you're starting out, don't start your developing journey with Copilot. Just try to do it yourself. And when you are good with it, if you are good with web development, if you can actually do it by yourself, then only do that work using uh, Copilot. Actually, there are things from JetBrains as well. JetBrains has their own Copilot, and I just saw that AWS also have Q, another Copilot that they use. Actually, it's very fast. I think it's faster than I think it's faster than GitHub Copilot. Yes, the GitHub Student Developer Pack does include a Copilot package. With the GitHub Student Developer Pack, you get a GitHub Pro, which includes the GitHub Copilot as well. Actually, these are very, very expensive tools that GitHub is allowing students to just use for free. So there is the hello world. Yeah. I think we can move on to our next file, which is the example one. Again, I just created this because I just wanted to show you something. So you can use title to define the title of the document, and then there's the body. Okay, that's wrong. Okay, there's something wrong with that one. Yeah. There it is. You have your head, and there's actually something wrong with this document. Yeah, anyway, so you have your header. This is the place where you actually define your titles, and in the next part you can see other things as well. And inside the body you can use I'm using BR. That's why there's a huge space here. That's a line break. And then you can use H1, which means heading one. And then there's a form tag, which means exactly this round part, this part. That is where you can use labels, and you can use an input field. Then again, I'm using line breaks because I'm not using CSS at the moment. And there's this input. You can use a type, ID, name, these kind of things. Actually, when you use type, that means it validates. It validates whether the input that you are providing here is an email or not. That's one of the important things you have to understand. I'll talk about that part in JavaScript as well, but this is one of the important things of HTML. You can actually get your work done just using HTML, but with CSS, it makes the thing beautiful. And with JavaScript, you can do complex business logics. So This is the, you can see that I'm using H1 again. I'm using this table and table headings, table rows, table headings, and then we have table rows and these kind of stuff. You can just try to use this, and I actually have attached this link here. This is the resource that I used when it comes to learning HTML. I think I started using HTML, not just starting out HTML, but when I started learning HTML in UCSC, there were a lot of things that you have to learn about. W3 school covers all these parts. Just go to this link, you can find it. And finally, there's this login form. This is the one I'm going to talk about, I'm going to develop in the next part with CSS as well. So, yeah. Okay, so there's another one. Developer Mozilla, yes, Mozilla one. Mozilla's documentation on HTML. I'll put it in the chat for now, and I'll put it in the resources as well after the session. Yeah, after the session, can you send me that link after the session so I can put it in the documentations? Okay, so with that, I think we can move to the next part, which is CSS. So, what is CSS? CSS is the cascading style sheet. It's a rule-based language that controls how web pages are presented to the user. So when you're using a website or web app, if you see very beautiful colors, if you see very spaces between some things, that's done using CSS. It controls the layout and the presentation of the web application written in HTML or XML. If you don't know what XML is, put that in your notepad after the session. Again, go through it and see what it is. So I think we can just move on to the hands-on session here. HTML to CSS. Then again, you have the HTML CSS branch where it contains this file. So let me just change my branch here as well. Okay, so when you actually start to use HTML and CSS, then you start using these directories, because keeping these things together, keeping your code files together when it comes to working in a project, I'll show that in a big project. But when it comes to working, if you are using a form and if you have styles specifically for that form, then it's better to put those two in a closed in the same directory. And yeah, so I'm using the name login because I have a login form created. And yeah, just let me show it to you. Okay, so here's the form. So what is the difference between this form and the previous one? What's the main difference? It actually looks beautiful. So we have used colors, we have centered it to the display, and then we have added some small margins between the labels and the inputs. That's about the color. Yeah, so this is how you actually do that. So this is the styles.css sheet. I forgot to mention this in the previous part. When you're creating a file for HTML, the extension would be form.html. And when you're creating a file for CSS, then that would be CSS. So I have used HTML in here, and in the HTML file, in the head, you can see that there is this line. This is the line that connects the HTML document, HTML file with the style sheet. If I comment this line, again, this is the one that you use in HTML to add a comment. Or else you can click your Alt and Control and slash for that as well. Once you remove this line, once you commented this line, you can see how the actual HTML structure looks like. And when I uncommented it, then you can see the difference between the previous one and the new one. So in here also, as you can see, let me go to in here also you can see this one, login. That is this part, the login one. Why does it have a green color? If you go to if you go to your style sheet, you can see there's the h1 tag has one these color schemes. Actually there are different ways you can put colors, if I can remember correctly. According to our lectures, there were 4. You will learn those things as well. You have to study those as well. If you're an information student, if you're an information system student, you have to you have to study these things, because in the exam the lecturer will ask what are the 4 things, what are the 4 ways that you can link a style sheet to an HTML document. So there are inline HTML, inline CSS, then you have this document here, and you can use classes as well in here. This is what's the difference between this button and this container. In here you can see we have used dot. There, if you see, if it is a tag like h1 or form or div, then you can use it without the dot. But if you are using a class to identify a specific division, then you have to use the dot here. And there's another one as well. You can use hashtags when it comes to if you are defining that specific element using an I. So I think we can just add an email here. Just add my index number just like that, and enter password test 1234. And when I click this, there were no issues. It just submitted. But in the placeholder, if you can see, added the index number should contain the form of 2022 / is / the 3 numbers. Then why did it not work? That's because you have to use JavaScript when it comes to doing that kind of complex form validations. So the word is actually form validation. This is one of the important parts that you have to again go through and learn, because you need it. You are going to need it in your first year project, second year project, in your whole life. If you are following a career path in web development, in your whole life, you are going to need form validations. So I think with the time we can move on to the next part as well. In this part, I'm using HTML, CSS, and the next one is JS. So let me get to the slides. In the JS, JavaScript is a scripting language. So find the difference between a programming language and a scripting language as well. It's up to you. And that enables you to create dynamically updating content, control multimedia, animate images, and pretty much everything else. So HTML does give you the structure, and CSS makes your website or web app looks amazing. And with JavaScript, you can actually make the web app or the website work. So let me show what that means. So, okay. So in this part, let me change my branch to CSS and JS, this one. Okay. So I have 2 forms here. One is the one I created, and there's a new one. So I have used a new one in here. Okay. Just let me start this form. This is the one I just showed you in the CSS one as well. I just copy pasted the same thing, but I added a specific line here. Script src, script.js, and script. So I want you to go through this. I want you to understand how it actually works. I don't have that much time to explain line by line how this code works. That's why I'm going to give you the code. There are different things you can do. There are so many other things that you can actually work on. Uh, and so again, you have to understand the directory structure. Okay, so yeah, thank you, Raima. So Raima just told me why we put our JavaScript script tag in the back. When you are loading a file, in order to make the file speed, in order to make the loading process speed, you can load the first part without the script file. So that's one of the main reasons that you put your script file at the end. Actually, I did not know that. Yeah, I did not know that. So let's go to this file. What does this one contains? So if you see this one, when you go through after the session, you can go through this and you will see that I have used this one, double slashes, because that is how you add a comment in JS. And one of the important things, I'll talk about this in the last part of the session as well. It's better to comment and mention what exactly you're doing. These are very small things. You don't have to mention this, but when you're working in a complex application, if you are working on a big corporation, then there might be another 50 or 50, 60, maybe thousands of developers that are working on the same project. When you leave your organization, then there's the next person that comes to fill your position. Then that person has to understand what exactly you were doing in this code file. So that's one of the mention you can use these comments and keep a clear documentation inside the code as well. Yes, you can create an outside documentation, but if you can have a good clear inside a documentation inside the code, that would also be. The one thing I talked about is using the index number just like that. So I'm going to add this here and I'm going to click login. So if you can see now, I got the message that please enter a valid index number in the format of that. So how did I actually get that? So in here, I'm using a get element by ID function to see and equal it to this variable. I'm going through this in a very fast phase, but I know if you're new here, this might sound like gibberish, but feel free to go through this code file, try to understand what I'm doing. I'm getting this index number here and I'm equaling into this, and then I try to match it with these things. So when I'm doing this, I realized you need to understand what does these signs mean as well. These are called wildcards. You will need this in your computer systems or Linux or something like that. Yeah, as well. Yeah, you will use these things as well, and then you are using you are trying to I'm doing the password validation here as well. So if I put this number correctly and I click this, I used test 1234. A password must contain at least one uppercase letter. So it goes through and see whether all these things are satisfied. So in order to get through this, I need to add TES with a capital T, then at sign, then 123, something like that, 4. Then only I can submit this form without any errors showing up. So I'm going to go to the next form. In this one, you can see that I have actually, I can't remember where yeah, this is the place I got this form. This is not something I made. And in this one, they have used JavaScript to handle different other things as well. As you can use this, I'll fill this form like this. Uh, yeah, here you can see I just filled this form, and by using this, they have done switch between the toggle menu. Actually, if you go to the JavaScript file, you can find the toggling password visibility, this part. They are changing the input type to password and text. So these are some amazing things that you can actually do with JavaScript. There are so many other things you can do with JavaScript when it comes to web development. So I hope you got an understanding, but just let me show you one thing as well. I'm going to change the form of this Gmail. I'm going to remove this and add a dot. And when I click submit in the previous form, you may remember that we got the notification from above, not inside this. But when I click this now, I get this color change, I get this valid email address error. You can just go through this code and find how does this code do it, how it actually works. You can find it. Actually, it's actually documented here. You can find exactly how it works. So I think with that we can move on to the next part. So the next JavaScript and PHP. At the moment, I don't have PHP running in my laptop, so I did not started with it, but I found this amazing resource here. This is another site that I usually use when it comes to working with related issues. You can go through this website. I have put it in the documentation as well, the complete guide to work on it. Take your time. Again, you have enough time these days. You can work on it. So the what does exactly PHP means? PHP is the server-side scripting language embedded in HTML, and its simplest form. PHP allows web developers to create dynamically content and interact with databases. With JavaScript also, you can do the interactions with databases, but when it comes to using the WAMP stack, you usually use PHP. So I know I did cover a lot during the last part. So I have another 3-minute Q&A. You can have time. But yeah, I want you to ask any questions you have with the previous parts in this right now. Upload the link to the documentation. What exact documentation? The PHP one. Yeah, actually that's available in the GitHub repo. You can find it. Do you have any tips to get started on JavaScript since it's a little complex to study? I'd say, you know the way that you started learning C during the last few weeks of at UCSC. If you have started using C, just do it that way. Create variables, do some loops, uh, use if conditions, and see exactly how it works. Then create some small functions, and yeah, just use the terminal first, and then you can integrate those to a web application. That would be my answer for that one. Resources for JavaScript course recommendations. JavaScript resources I used. I did use the LinkedIn course back then. It was called JavaScript as a language. It was recommended to me by one of my friends as well. If you have LinkedIn Learning, then you can use that one. I'll send a message in the. I'll update this web page here. This one, the web1.kh.code.org. I'll update this one with some new information. I'll go through the YouTube and find some good things that you can actually use. Okay, any other questions? Again, one of the main things I found useful was learning JavaScript as a language, because when you're using it in this type of web development context, you don't actually see how it is a language. If you can see JavaScript as a language in the beginning, then you will have the basic understanding how to use it in a web. I mean, if you use JavaScript just in web development, then you don't see what you can actually do with it inside the inside the web application. There are so many things that you can do inside a web application just by using JavaScript. But if you just focus only on the things that we use in web development, like create element, get element by ID, trim, those kind of functions, yes, you use those on the functions as well. But if you actually create the trim function in JavaScript using your knowledge, then just like you are coding in C, you can do that in JavaScript as well. That would be nice. Okay, so let's move on to, yeah, before moving on to that one, I have another form that I want to show you. Get this. I think it's this code. So this is the code that I used to generate this web application. That's one of the main reasons actually I generated this web application. I just wanted to show you how a React front end works. So you have your TXX here. So I'm using Next.js when it comes to developing React apps because it's easy, and it manages all your Tailwind CSS codes and other parts as well. You don't have to do routing by yourself. And yeah, so this is how it actually works. So let me show you how this one works. So let me enter my name here. Yeah, this one, when I click join community, you can see an alert coming up when it comes to submitting the one. And when you successfully join the community, you can go to the community page. And once you go there, you can see this one as well. So it's not using database to get the name back and forth, but I'm using a trick to do that. It's called slugging. If you can see it here, it's it's just a trick. Yeah. Uh, I have made this repo. I have made this repo public as well. You can go through with it. I actually have not made this environmental file available, which you can use in the database part. When it comes to working with JavaScript, you can have a front end and back end in two different locations. That's the way actually you use it. But with Next.js, if you're building a very simple application in this part, I just have to connect to database and put a record to the database. So I don't have to run another server. So that's why I use this API server actions. I use the server here. This is a very complex part. This is not for the beginners. I'm just trying to show something. If you have used MongoDB, then you know how to connect with these things. This is the one I'm connecting. I have used env files to store my username and password. So again, tip: do not post your environmental variables or the sensitive data to the GitHub public or private, whatever it is. And yeah, these are the functions that I'm talking about. Try to write these functions by yourself. When you are familiar with these functions, you can use a code generator. I'll talk about the use of generative AI in the last part. Again, I think with time, I think we can move to the next part. Yeah. Okay, so the homework is, this is the submission for this week. The Infinite Loop will provide you a certificate and a small badge with this for this one as well, that you can put it in your LinkedIn. Uh, and in here, you have to create a small portfolio website using HTML, CSS, and JS, and you have to upload it to GitHub and put the link in the form. I'll send it later. And once you do that, you will get a badge from the Infinite Loop organizing committee that you can showcase in your LinkedIn profile. So take a screenshot of this. I did not talk about CRUD, but I showed some things that I did with it. CRUD means create, retrieve, update, and delete. These are the operations that we use when it comes to running a form or any of the web applications that we use. this is something very important that you're going to need as well. Do we have a deadline to submit it? I'll ask the InfiniteLoop organizing committee and let you know in the chat after the session in your WhatsApp chat. Yeah, I just showed you the MERN stack, basic MERN stack. I showed you I used the way I used MongoDB just to store it. And I did not use Express somehow. I used Next.js. And then I used React on the front end. And everything was running on Node.js server. So this is what I use with Next.js. It can differ from person to person. You might like to use Vue.js or something like that, but this is not just for the beginners. Yeah, you have 1 week to submit your portfolio starting from now, I guess. Yeah. So homework for this part is find out what a framework is. What is NoSQL? What is a meta framework? The one I used, Next.js is a meta framework. What is server-side rendering? These are very complex things. These are not for the beginners. If you are an intermediate, if you want to go to the next level of web development, these are the things that you have to understand. If you have any questions, again, my LinkedIn is open. Don't message me on WhatsApp unless it's urgent. Just send me an email or put a message in my LinkedIn. I'll reply. Yeah. Let's talk about these few things. First thing is generative AI. I showed you how to use the GitHub Copilot, and I hope that you don't, if you're a beginner, you don't get started with it. It's easy, but it will probably ruin the way you actually code it, because as I know, in organizations, when you work in the industry, you can't use these code editors because you are working on private repositories. So when you get familiar with a language, when you get familiar with the framework or whatever it is, if you can actually do it by yourself, then only do it using a generative AI chatbot. Or if you put your part of the code into ChatGPT, that will generate the whole code. But if you don't know what you are exactly doing, then please don't do it. You're going to regret that. And I'm actually glad when I was getting started with web development, that there was no generative AI, these kind of things. Actually, I'm actually glad for that. If there was things like that, I would probably use it, because I'm a very lazy person. So the next part is about career options. As a web developer, you can start as a web developer, and again, there are so many other options as well. I'm not the person who should talk about this. There are other YouTube videos that you can see, people who are talking about this, who are in the industry. I think that would be the best option for this. But you can talk, start working in cloud sector as well. That's a very demanding sector. And then there's you can get started with architecture as well. It's a complex job. I think it requires a lot of experience, but it's also a good area that you can work on. If you have an interest in architectures and the basic concepts of web development, I mean, you have to understand the basics. But if you want to dive deep into these architectures and how exactly these things work, I think you should start with Java, because I know one of my friends said that in order to understand design patterns, it's better to work with C++. But I personally think if you are just going to use if you are just focusing on web development, Java is enough. And yeah, so again, I'm not the specialist in this department, so you have to go to LinkedIn, search for software developers that are in some of the reputed companies, or go to YouTube. There are so many videos about these things as well. So another thing is, I learned this from one of my juniors, not one from UCSC, but one from University of Colombo. I started working with him about 10 years. In the beginning, I was just focusing on tutorials. It's easy to learn things from tutorials, but if you start going over the docs, you will actually find out what exactly this does. And now I don't actually go to any tutorials when it comes to when I find the problem. First thing I do is go to the docs and see whether it's mentioned there. Then I go to Stack Overflow, or I just put the question in the Google. The last thing I would do is go to a YouTube tutorial. So always try to go through these docs, always try to read these documentations, because they are made by developers for developers. So yeah. And the next one is design approach. This is not the design pattern approach I was mentioned a little time ago. This is about seeing the web development, seeing the front end as a designer. I mean, you can develop front ends without actually develop websites that looks amazing. Then you need to think as a developer. There are so many designer concepts, something like you have to think about the typography, you have to think about the layout, you have to think about how do you use colors. And there are design principles like Hicks law. What are other things? There are other things, there are techniques that you can use. So if you are starting out, the first thing I would say is plan your website in a Figma or something like that. Try to do a prototype using Figma. And Figma, there are other tools as well, but Figma is the one that I use. It's easy to use, it's easy to share. You can do it there and then try to do it. I mean, in your second year project, you have to definitely do that. You have to show your UIs first, and then you have to work on it. And then with the time, I think I'll move on to the next part as well. So the next part is version control. We talked about GitHub, we talked about Git. Actually, Git is the thing that actually does the work, and GitHub is the place that hold these repositories, the work that you have done. So write these things down. And then next thing is keep it simple. If you can do the work using a simple function, just don't overdo it. I'm not talking about adding types, that kind of stuff. If you are using JavaScript, it's better if you can get started with JavaScript, but after using JavaScript, if you are going to actually develop web applications, I think you should try to do it with TypeScript, because it's easy. It's good to know the errors before actually going into deployments. And yeah, the final part is documentation. Again, I told that docs are the things that developers made for developers. So if you are making something, make the documentation as well. I'm not talking about making a big PDF or a big website. I'm just, as you're getting started, it's good to write the comments better. I mean, not for h1 and write this is h1 tag. I'm talking about some functions that requires complex business process. When you're doing something, add a small tag and mention what it does. Yeah. So I think with that, we have come to the end of the session. So if you actually do find this session valuable, I want you to do two things. Actually, this is a marketing part. So it's not important, but if you can, I want you to follow me on GitHub. I don't want you to follow me on LinkedIn or anything, but if you can, put a follow, click the follow button on my GitHub. And this is my second year project that I'm working on. Here's the form. I'll put it in the web as well. Feel free to fill this one. It takes only about few minutes. Only it will take mostly 3 minutes. It's book lovers. If you are a book lover, then that's it. So with that, we have come to the final Q&A. So this does not have a time limit. Yeah, actually one of my batchmates is saying "Ek asadharnai." Yes, it is. But yeah, actually here's a fun fact. Did you know that in the beginning, PHP stands for personal home page? PHP is a script language written by Remus Ledo. But now it's standard for recursive utilization, PHP hypertext preprocessor. Actually, I don't know why it changed the name, but again, these are good things that you should know about when it comes to web development. It doesn't just have to be about working. You can learn a lot from these things. Again, go through the docs. if you are in React, if you want to get into React, go through the React docs. They have a canary version as well. If you go through your tutorials, you will never learn about the things that are in development. I can give you an example. So I did use this. If you know it, you know it. But I used something called a React. Let me just show it. So this one, this was not. This is now an official part of React, but it was not in the back. So in this one, we have only React 18.3, but they are going to release the React 19 as well. And if you can see that there's this lab icon, you can see it's the canary. The use form is currently only available in React Canary experimental channels. So there are many other things that you can actually learn from these things. If you go to the Next.js docs, nextjs.org/docs. In here also, there are so many things. If you want to get started with development, this is the place. I usually go to this place when I'm doing an installation or whatever it is. Developers have made these things for you to actually read. Actually, there's this one in our meeting today. Ravi, one of the persons I have seen actually reading Java. Uh, I have actually seen him reading the Java documentations. Uh, yeah, I think he learned a lot from that, and yeah, I think you will too. Uh, yeah, if you don't have any other questions, I think we can hand the session back to the organizing committee. And again, thank you for staying this long. I know I made some mistakes as well. Tell us about your favorite projects you have done. So one of the favorite projects recently was creating this Notion render. It's basically yes, but it was a fun one. And then I did created a chatbot that lets you talk with a celebrity. I did use some OpenAI tools as well. Those are not I didn't do it, but I have a portfolio. This is something I learned a lot from. This is the place. This is the one. It's not updated, but it's not. Here it is. So this is my portfolio. Yeah, you can see it. So this is something I learned a lot when I started developing it. I learned a lot when during the time I was developing it. I added this gallery. I added the contact information. I used Tailwind. I used Framer Motion. This is something I learned a lot from. I know it actually this is a exact copy of someone else's work. I did complete thing by myself. Like I said, I did not have the designer first approach in the beginning. This is one of the main things that made me realize this exactly does look like this. He changed it a little bit. Let me just show you. Yeah, he changed it a little bit, but you can go through these people's bio. You can search in YouTube. You can follow these YouTubers. What they copied more and more and more. They have added the color themes as well. Yeah, just like that. Follow other developers' works, and go to people's GitHubs and see what they have actually done. There are so many things. And again, if you are in UCSC, then there might be some C projects in this one as well. I have some big projects in here, 74 repositories, but some of them are private ones. I have worked on some of my personal projects, the daily grind one. Then I have created the space apps one. Then the IntelliHack web, and then I have also worked on the National Olympiad one. There are many other things that I have done in the last year actually. Yeah, you can do the same. You can just get started with some work, and yeah, think you can find some of the projects that I have worked on my GitHub as well. Again, feel free to contact me through my emails or the LinkedIn if you have any questions. Yeah, I think that sums it up. And again, thank you, InfiniteLoop, for having me. I know I did make some mistakes during the session as well. Again, thank you, Lakshit. Thank you, Ashwini. Thank you, Ravimal, for helping me and sending me these small facts on the side of my chat. Yeah, I think you can have my session right now.
Thank you, Kaviru. That was very well delivered and concise. I'm sure it was quite helpful to our participants. Please accept this token of appreciation with our gratitude. So, make sure you submit your tasks to become the winner and receive a shareable badge to showcase your victory. The next session will be on data structures and algorithms. It will be held on 7th of July from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Make sure to attend this as well to receive your certificates. So now you have a few minutes to raise any additional questions you have related or unrelated to the session. You can drop your questions in the chat box or raise your hand to ask your questions. Also, we provided a feedback form. Please take a few minutes to fill that and give us the feedback on the session so we can improve. All right, looks like we've got no questions. So we can move on to the group photo. So please turn in your cameras and mark your participation. You can download the virtual background from the link provided in the chat box. We'll give you a few minutes to get ready, so please download it and turn on your cameras and mark your participation. All right, looks like that's it. So 3, 2, 1, say cheese. Okay, thank you everyone. So thanks for joining, guys. Make sure that you join for the next session as well. It will be really interesting. Thanks for participating and have a wonderful evening. Bye.